All right, welcome. Psych Guy is back. If you're new to this channel, what or who is Psych Guy? That would be me. I'm a double board certified adult and child adolescent psychiatrist here doing this YouTube thing, doing vids, making vids on interesting topics that I know you good people will like. Just a heads up, this video, just as with my last, won't show any new video footage of me, myself, I'm guessing we'll have the Kim Jong-un it, I guess, for now. The problem is that I ordered a mini SD video card from Best Buy that I'm still waiting for to get in the mail. So we're just gonna have to do this video style similar to my last vid for now. Hopefully this won't apply to my next vid. And another thing about this vid, since this video involves a case revolving around two children, one who has special needs, who both are still missing, hopefully alive and out there somewhere, hopefully. You never know with these kinds of things. But yeah, since these two kids are still missing, I'm going to turn this video off any sort of monetization because I just think it's just wrong to try to exploit and profit on missing kids in this sort of manner. And I encourage any others out there doing vids on this topic to do the same, unless they donated any and all proceeds to some charitable organization. But I don't know, that's just me. Maybe it's the field of medicine that I practice in and how I adhere to strict and strong ethical principles. As for the title, I hope that the person I'm doing the video about isn't mourning, or isn't in mourning, I should say. And hopefully the kids are alive, but I have my doubts. Though you never know, who knows? Okay, so now that we've gotten all that out of the way, let's talk about this video's case. It is about an ongoing case that was rekindled over the weekend by a popular NBC TV show called Dateline, where they did an updated segment on this past Friday that was followed by recent news that the main defendant in the case's bail and request for reduction of her bail was denied. Now, I'm not going to go into details about the specifics of this case because there are other channels already doing this. And this channel is more of a why than a what or a what happened channel. But just briefly, to those of you who don't know the background of this case, allow me to give a quick recap of this case to catch everyone up to speed before we get to the most important part of this video, or any of my videos, the potential psychological reasonings, the why behind the why instead of the what behind the what. So basically this case revolves around a young woman named Lori Vallow. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it rightly, but anyways, I'm going to say Vallow. She's currently on her fifth marriage at the very young age of 46, who is currently sitting in an Idaho jail awaiting trial for charges of felony child desertion charges and other misdemeanors. At the heart of this case are her poor children that I alluded to earlier, both who are missing and both who have not been seen since September 2019. And Vallow and her latest husband number 5, they both have not been cooperative at all in the search, according to police. Also at the heart of this case are 3 people connected to both Lori and her latest husband, Chad Daybell, who have died under suspicious, mysterious circumstances over the past year, with 2 of these people being the then current spouses of both Lori and Chad. And immediately after both of them passed away, Lori and Chad tied the knot. Now, what makes this case rather interesting is Lori's former and 4th husband, one of the 2 people that died mysteriously this past year. He accused Lori in divorce papers of joining a Doomsday cult, declaring herself a godsent to prepare the world for an imminent apocalypse. This is before he met his demise July of last year. And lo and behold, the person that she fell in love with, her 5th and current husband, Mr. Chad Daybell, he's the author of several religious-themed novels about the end times. Now, Lori has always been religious, it appears. Like, just studying her background, she was really heavily involved in the Mormon church. However, it appears in late 2018, Lori started getting really involved with doomsday prophecies and theories about the end of the world, where in December 2018, she and Chad Daybell, her current husband, appeared together for the first time on Preparing a People's Podcast Network's The Time to Warrior Up podcast, where they both discussed Doomsday and theories about the end of the world. It was later in February 2019 where her then fourth husband, Charles Vallow, filed for divorce, claiming in court documents that he feared his wife would kill him and that she'd develop strange doomsday cult-like beliefs, reportedly calling herself, quote-unquote, a god assigned to carry out the work of the 144,000 at Christ's second coming in July 2020, end quotes. And then 5 months later in July, he's dead. Followed by 3 months later in October, Chad's former wife of 30 years is found dead. Whereupon just shortly weeks after that, both Lori and Chad are married. And again, like I stated before, their two kids that were living with them have been missing and not been seen since September of last year. So let's now talk about the meat of this video. Let's try to get to the underlying psychology of why this is all happening. Now, there's two things to focus here: the individual and the system. The individual being Lori Vallow, or as she's referred to now as Cult Mom in the media. And also the system being this proposed hypothetical doomsday cult that Chad Daybell is supposedly spearheading or leading, or so I assume. So in regards to Lori specifically, it would be rather improper for me to diagnose her, or anyone in this case, as I have not evaluated officially or conducted a proper psychiatric diagnostic interview per se. And further, she nor Chad or anyone related to this case is not my client at all. Someone, though, who is working on their fifth marriage at such a young age, between the mid to late 40s, you wonder, though, about a possible personality pathology. I'm thinking about more cluster B, borderline type. In fact, one of the criteria for having BPD, or borderline personality disorder, is a pattern of intense and unstable relationships with family, friends, and loved ones, often swinging from extreme closeness and love, idealization, to extreme dislike or anger, which is known as devaluation, hence leading to their having multiple relationships and failed ones. With that being said, sort of fitting the picture of her having five, or currently working now on husband number five, having had these multiple partners sort of thing. It sort of ties into another criteria for borderlines, that being having difficulty trusting, which is sometimes accompanied by irrational fear of other people's intentions, also tying into borderlines having this fear, this inherent fear of being abandoned, coming full circle and explaining their reason and having the yearning to be in a relationship. Actually, I can argue and say that her super religiosity to the point of gravitating towards this doomsday cult fitting into like a feeling of dissociation, sort of cutting off from oneself, seeing oneself out of her body. I did see that Dateline special this past Friday, and one of Lori's friends, or maybe ex-friends, I don't know. But anyways, she mentioned that she noticed Lori complain of that sort of detached feeling the second time she saw her after a long time lapse. When she saw a worsening in Lori's overall presentation and demeanor. So this could be reflective of that, which sort of brings me to my other point or possible suspicion. Could she have a possible bipolar illness? In that same interview with her friend, or former friend, I'm guessing now, she did mention that the second time around, when she did see Lori, she did see Lori talking very fast and was rambling about more nonsensical, super hyper religious topics, which when I hear that, to me, my psyche senses go off and say, well, one can see that in a classic manic and or mixed episode related to a bipolar illness, or a subtreated or non-treated bipolar illness. So that could be a possibility. I mean, who knows? But I think the more important aspect of this case is to look at the system itself. The psychology of cults, as it does appear from reviewing the fact and records of the case, that we do know, she did get involved with this Chad Daybell guy, and at the time he was writing books about doomsday prophecies and doing podcasts and such that was considered almost extreme religious prophecies. So yeah, pretty much cult-like, more or less. Now, I want to say I've read somewhere that here in America, each year there's like around 2,000 to 3,000 cults forming, new cults forming a year. And there are various types also, ranging from political to commercial to religious. Religious, by the way, that's the most common type. I myself actually had a few cases that dealt with cults. Most recently, I treated a kid who was a victim to a religious cult. Really, though, it's pretty much the same concept. Cults are built on the foundation of one thing and one thing only: exploitation and brainwashing through behavioral modification techniques of an already vulnerable subset of the prey or the victim. Usually, one tends to see these low-grade type symptoms specific to affect, such as depression, anxiety in the form of fear, guilt, paranoia, a retardation in facial expression / body posture and speech, a difference in their physical appearance, a sense of passivity, and memory impairments. Symptoms that I saw a lot with that one case I was talking about. Now, with the Lori case, I don't know if she's the prey or the pred. I gotta say pred because YouTube will censor certain words, but you know what I'm talking about. Anyways, we know more than likely with this Doomsday cult, more than likely Chad is sort of the ringleader. But is Lori also a co-conspirator to this? Or is she an innocent bystander who got swept away and victimized into this cult? It's hard to say, I don't know. Especially when I don't have all the information and no one really does at this point in time. What I can say though is that she exhibits elements of both. Now you gotta realize that not all cults are bad or destructive. However, the ones that are concerning are the ones where they exploit people's fears, such as the religious ones that sort of talk about the end coming near, sort of the doomsday prophecies. Those are rather more of the malicious ones and are usually spearheaded by arrogant, narcissistic individuals who are attracted to power and control and will instill fear into the vulnerable followers by speaking about such scary topics about death and the apocalyptic end of times. I mean, two quick examples. Jim Jones and this Chad Daybell guy. Both must be charismatic, arrogant individuals. I can't 100% say this for sure, but Jim Jones was probably attracted to the thought of leading his cult and molesting women to his liking instead of working at Montgomery Ward selling washing machines. Likewise, who does this Chad Daybell guy think he is? This guy is some chosen one by God to lead some sort of religious movement of Christ? This guy? No offense, but this guy looks like he's an insurance adjuster or a 2-bit mortgage broker. But it's the fear that weakens and breaks down the ego strengths of their followers, frightening each and every one. And usually these followers, again, are vulnerable and are all joined and bonded together in unison by some form of common ideological belief of thought patterns fostered by the charismatic leader, which in turn will help them to transcend and better their lives. And this leader a lot of times will pit this sort of us versus them narrative. We are the right ones. They are the ones against you. They don't want what's best for you. I do. I have the truth. You don't. And trust me, this is what's happening. This is how they're all so successful, even pitting their families, the victims' families, against them, against the victims, brainwashing and saying that their families are against, you, the victim, right? I mean, you gotta understand, these are vulnerable people. A lot of time, the ones that are, who are manipulated are in a transitionary part of a phase of their life. Someone leaving home for the first time, someone who has just lost a friend or a lover, someone who's just passing through. Folks who have their defenses down, they're rather more vulnerable and less psychologically and sociologically stable, especially the ones with low self-esteem to begin with. And this ties into my next point. Women make up approximately 70% of cult members around the globe. I personally believe that this is because women are more prone to having higher rates of lower self-esteem based on the social inequalities that have always been present up to present day, where the odds are stacked more in a sociological favor with the male as opposed to the female, in combination to an already ingrained phenotypical roles of subservience and natural expected authoritarian oppression. However, a lot of my colleagues may think otherwise and think that it's just because women simply attend more social gatherings and hence put them, statistically speaking, to falling prey and joining groups that will more than likely otherwise victimize them. You know, the stats are higher in that sort of scenario. But anyways, let's see here. What else about cults? A lot of times it's a lesser of two evils type situation. The teenagers who escaped abusive homes and join a new family of cult for hopes of a better life. The sex trafficking victims, that's another example right there. But once the pred gets them, okay, it's just constant brainwashing, repetitive exercises or stressing / lectures, and a lack of sleep to keep the mind in a more vulnerable state, thus in turn coercing the victim to sort of modify the reality to mesh with the reality of the leaders in a measure of survival, almost like a Stockholm syndrome. And also by isolating their victims, it prevents any family members or friends to intervene, while the cult leader instills his or her message, and that message only being the message to learn, to teach and learn, whereas others, around them, everyone else around them is shut down because they're isolated. No family, no friends, not even any media of any sort, such as TV, the news, internet, etc. Another thing about these cults provide an illusion of comfort. Human beings desire comfort, and understandably, they tend to become fearful and don't like uncertainty or instability, especially folks who do come from or are brought up or raised from rather invalidating home environments. So they see this cult and think, this can help and promote a better sense of internal stability in myself. And cult leaders also a lot of times will rather make ridiculous, unattainable promises that no one else can offer, such as total financial security, total health, constant peace of mind, and or eternal life. Basically concepts or aspects that every human being desires at the deepest core root level. Not only that, but human beings always want answers and clarities to all questions that life may bring upon. And cult leaders promise answers to any and all questions, or at least the questions that the victims are in search of for, a lot of times. What's also very interesting that I found upon doing my research is that I read there's some expert from Harvard in the early 80s. His name was Dr. Clark. He coined a phrase, he called it cult conversion syndrome, which basically represents an overload of the brain's ability to process information. So that's what happens at these leaders, that's what they do to their victims. They constantly give this never-ending personalized attention and coaxing during this convincing about to convert type experience. And it's the overloading and constant barraging, it seems like, at least from what I've understood or gathered, that paralyzes the poor victim's ability to properly process and synthesize information, as if all defenses have been turned off and now they are brainwashed and they are now induced in this trance-like state, all caused by the cult's leader. And no matter what it takes to get the job done, even to the point for the leader to charm up and be very highly charismatic, in fact, a lot of times grooming the victim. I know I read or heard that Chad in the beginning of his and Lori's relationship, he was charming her up, calling or comparing her to an angel that's been sent from above. And she literally took that to heart as if she was an angel or one of God's angels. So yeah, that coaxing and charming process, kind of very similar to that, how like a pimp would in the beginning meet a young woman, a future recruit, charm her up, and coax her to be the only one, when in reality, she to him is just another, an object and one for future victims. So yeah, in both scenarios, in the Lori or the future sex trafficking prostitute situation or scenario, both being very easily suggestible due to their lowered inhibitions that were lowered by the charismatic alpha dog. Now, also, what was also interesting in my research was reading about how Dr. Clark made a comparison to these cult victims to that of individuals who suffer from temporal lobe epilepsy. Quote unquote, this is what Dr. Clark said, the symptoms of temporal lobe epilepsy are similar to those seen or reported as resulting from cult conversions. Increased irritability, loss of libido or altered sexual interest, ritualism, compulsive attention to detail, mystical states, humorlessness and sobriety, heightened paranoia. So yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting also. Now to finish up here, how do we help out these folks who have been subjected to these cults? How do we help these victims out? Short answer is that it's highly difficult and can take many, many months, if not years, to be able to do so. Just as these individuals were programmed, we as clinicians have to deprogram and almost rewire their brains. It's a very difficult and lengthy process, and if there's any clinician that may be still watching this, or if anyone still watches this video and interested in solutions, here's what I recommend. Number one, first and foremost, like with any sort of therapeutic experience or encounter, provide a nurturing, empathic, and safe environment for the victim to feel safe and comfortable in disclosing and processing information in. Remember, it was a very traumatic experience of what he or she endured. This brings me to my next point. Number two, speaking of trauma, make sure you screen for any sort of trauma-related illness or illnesses, most notably PTSD and or unipolar depression. And if present, consider a combination, pharmacological, in particular SSRI, if no history of mania, plus psychotherapy in order to maximize the outcome of your therapeutic intervention, i.e. if the individual is in accordance and agreeable to this, of course. If not, if they're not cool with medication, that's fine, no problem. Just realize, as you probably figured out, that therapy alone can also be beneficial, though it may take a little longer, more than likely. Speaking of therapy, number three, you're going to have former cult members do a lot of blaming more so themselves constantly of what happened to them. Make sure you reframe those cognitive distortions quickly and do not get bogged in. Otherwise, you're running the risk of the victim abruptly leaving therapy prematurely due to the victim projecting their failure onto the therapist, which is you. No, it's you again that's gotta sort of take the reins and make sure you quickly normalize and neutralize any and all negative, irrational thinking patterns, especially these self-blaming ones. Number four, don't bash the cult and or cult leader. You gotta understand that the victim, especially in the beginning, has got the Stockholm Syndrome thing probably going on still. So the last thing you wanna do is say anything too negative about the cult or the leader. Because anything negative said about the cult or the leader is like saying negative about the victim. Because their egos are fused together, right? So be wary of that and let time do its thing. Over time, you'll start to see the slow separation and differentiation of egos as the victim over time and through proper therapy eventually will separate and individualize away from the union that he or she once had with that of the cult leader or the cult itself. Number five, promote strong psychoeducation. I mean, this is a given. That's something that I know for sure I always do. Hopefully all the other clinicians that are watching this video also do in real life. But in particular, specific to this topic, educate later once a strong therapeutic alliance has been attained. Educate the psychological manipulation and abuse to which they were subjected to. Help them manage day-to-day activities. Help them to reconnect with past relationships and a better sense of purpose that the cult or the time spent with the cult interfered with. Number six, optimize their social support network by bringing in family and friends to help with the healing process. a sort of gently reintroducing them and refamiliarizing them to the world that they once had or left behind for their cult will go a long way. And it goes vice versa too, as some family members themselves may not understand or rather feel betrayed that they lost their loved ones to a complete stranger and his or her wacky cult. So consider, aside from individual therapy, consider incorporating a heaping side of family therapy if need be. So yeah, those are just some quick suggestions that I would recommend to any trained professionals in the field that I'm in. I mean, it's worked for me, as I'm sure it'll probably work for you too, or at least I hope so. Now, as for the Lori Vallow case, I hope that one day we find those children. I'm hoping and holding on to the slim chance that maybe they're out there somewhere, maybe hidden away in some sort of compound or location to where there are other Doomsday cult members and that they are still alive. My thoughts and prayers go out to those poor children, and as mentioned, once again, as mentioned at the beginning of this video, I will make sure that this video will not be monetized just out of respect for the missing children. Okay, we are done. Psych Guy is done. There's a little daylight left out still here. Oh wait, I forgot. We're still social distancing here. No problem. It's not like I had a social life to begin with in the first place. Hey, if you guys like what you saw, don't forget to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe. Let's grow this army of thinkers. Definitely more to come. My goal is to hit 2020 subscribers by the end of 2020. Let's make it happen. Anyways, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next vid. Bye.
Slip inside the eye of your mind. Don't you know?